So if you want to get started in electronics, this is basically the bare minimum of what you need. You need a solderless breadboard, a USB adapter for charging cell phones and things like that, a voltmeter, and some hookup wire. Now, I always suggest getting pre-formed hookup wire because by the time you buy a spool of wire and spend time stripping it and bending it, you then have to have a set of wire strippers and things like that. These are way more convenient and they're actually cheaper to start up with. They do cost a little bit, but a kit of these probably costs somewhere between $5 and $10. So if you've never used a solderless breadboard before, basically this is set up so that you have rows of pins, and these are all connected. So when you plug a wire here, it's connected to this pin, this pin, this pin, and likewise these 5 are connected to each other. However, these are not connected to these. And then across here, all of these pins are connected. And all of these pins are connected. Now, on a few solderless breadboards, there'll be 2 rows of pins here, and each row is connected, but they're not connected to each other. And then occasionally you'll see one that has a break in between these rows. And what that means is all of these pins are connected, but they're not connected to these. So anyway, pretty much any solderless breadboard will work. There's a few things you need to learn about the solderless breadboards, and that is when you use these preformed jumper wires, they're the right size to fit in those holes. If you just cut any wire, what happens is there's a little connection in here that's basically kind of a spring connection, and you put too big of a wire in there and you damage the connectors in there, and over time this breadboard will get unreliable. So that's another reason it's a good idea to use these preformed jumpers, is because they're all uniform size and you won't damage your breadboards. Breadboards aren't very expensive, but then the other thing you want on a breadboard, some of them have them and some of them don't. If you'll notice over here, you have this kind of a hook, and across the top you have a hook. Well, on the bottom opposite edge you've got a receiver, and on the other side you've got a receiver. So if you get boards that are designed to do that, you can then assemble them into larger circuits simply by snapping your breadboards together. Now, this doesn't provide any electrical connection, but it allows you to build bigger and bigger circuits and then jumper over. For instance, I could jumper from here over to here to advance power through the board. Voltmeters are fairly cheap. They used to be pretty pricey, but you can usually pick a voltmeter up. This is actually a pretty expensive one, probably 15 bucks, but you can get cheaper ones, and voltmeters are not super critical. I mean, most of them that are produced today are well within the accuracy needed for anything you're doing. And then this is basically a 5-volt voltage source, which a lot of your circuits will run on. In fact, until just recently, basically every logic circuit in the world ran on 5 volts. Now they run on lower voltages like 3.3, but a 5-volt supply will get you at least through the basics of electronics before you need to start buying more expensive power supplies. The only issue with this is you're going to need a USB cord that you can destroy, and it's quite limited on the amount of current, so you're limited on the size of projects. But for learning, this is more than adequate. Of course, you can spend a lot more money, but you can probably pick all of this up for 40 to 50 bucks, including shipping. A lot of places that sell these parts have a limit, like you can get free shipping if you order $100 or $25 or whatever. So what I do is I fill in to get that amount with things like displays and certain ICs and potentiometers and things like that. So I want to show you one piece right here. The reason I do these preformed jumpers is because right here I've kind of put a little demonstration on this board. With it, you get a jumper that can just jump to the next pin. Then you can get one that jumps 2 pins over, 3 pins, 4 pins, 5 pins, 6 pins, 7 pins, 8 pins, 9 pins, 10 pins. So you've got every combination up to 10 pins, which will cover interconnecting almost all ICs. The other reason I like using them is when you go to troubleshoot your circuit, as you can see, it's very easy to see where all the wires are running. Where if you use these what's called overhead jumpers like this a lot, if you use a lot of these, your circuit gets so complex that you can't troubleshoot it because you don't know where anything's running, and then you unplug something and you unplug the wrong wire and it breaks your circuit. You got to start all over. So using these that lay down flat on the board to build the majority of the circuit, and then using these overhead jumpers occasionally, makes your circuit much easier to troubleshoot. Now, one of the problems, these preformed jumper kits come with these longer jumpers, and then when you bend them, they don't fit back in the case. So as you advance a little bit, you can buy jumpers like this. And it's basically a jumper kit. The nice thing about them is they are flexible. You don't have to really bend them, and they come with a preformed header that will punch right down into the board with no real problems. And they're fairly simple to use. They also come in an array of colors so that it will help you trace down problems in the circuit. Where with these preformed jumpers, they're multicolored, but you've got the color covers the distance, the length, not really each individual wire. Like all these yellows are the same length, and all the oranges and all the reds. So if you use a lot of yellows, you still can't find anywhere anything runs. But with these, they're all the same length, but they come in different colors. So you can use, you can trace down the blue wire. Though not absolutely necessary, and we're talking about minimum needed to start up, the next thing you'd want to get is a good pair of fine needle nose pliers, because when you go to put these little jumpers in and take them out, they can be fairly difficult to get your fingernails on. And when these lay down flat, they can get difficult too. So I use a little pair of needle nose pliers or a tiny flat screwdriver and just kind of get underneath them and lift them up. You're going to need that also when you plug these ICs in. They're going to stick in there, and you can pull them up with your hands, but the worst thing that can happen is when you're going to pull this out with your hand, you got to use quite a bit of force, and then the IC rolls over and you wind up with the pins sticking in your fingers. So it's much easier just to take a little screwdriver and slip under the edge of it and just kind of work it up. It saves your fingers. So the next thing I would get is a small set of screwdrivers and some small set of needle nose pliers. But this will get you started. The next thing you're going to need, absolutely next, is components. You're going to need resistors and LEDs and things like that. So get this part, get the resistors and LEDs, and then start adding tools as you need them.